All right, take your Bibles and turn to Genesis chapter 37. How many here, by show of hands, have had a bad day in their lives? How about a bad week? A bad month?
No.
A bad year? A bad decade? Well, neither have I. I was just having my hand up for an example. Well, tonight we're going to be looking at the example of Joseph, a man of God in the Bible who was able to persevere through adversity, and he was not circumstance conditioned. He was a great example that as we look in the Old Testament, we can look back and see these examples of people. Whether they're good or bad, they're still examples of what we can do for God and what we should do and what we probably don't want to be doing for God. In chapter 37 of Genesis is where we'll start off. In verse 3 is where we'll start. Well, in verse 2, just to cover, it says, "These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding his flock with his brethren." So he's 17 right here as he shows up. Now Israel, which is also Jacob, it's the same person, loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all, that his father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. I'm the middle of 5 kids, and there's times where, I hate you and that kind of stuff. But they actually hated him. We'll see later they wanted to kill him, literally kill him, not just like, I'm going to kill you. But we'll see a little bit more. To understand this whole record, you really have to understand Genesis chapter 35. Just turn back a page. And in verse 23, the sons of Leah, so this is Jacob's sons. In verse 22, the last part, it says, "Now the sons of Jacob were 12." So Jacob or Israel had 12 sons. The sons of Leah, that's one of his wives, was Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simon and Levi and Judah and Issachar and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. And then it shows the handmaidens of each of those wives. Now, the key of this is, just a long story short, Jacob really loved Rachel and was willing to spend 7 years to wait for her. And when the 7 years was up, he kind of got tricked into marrying Leah instead, and then he waited another 7 years for Rachel, and then that is why Joseph and Benjamin are that's the woman that he loved. So that's like his firstborn. Even though it's not his real firstborn, that is his firstborn because it's the woman that he loved and the one that he wanted to marry. That's important to understand because Reuben is actually his firstborn. And Bishop Casey Pillai says that the coat of many colors was a coat of heirship. And that's what happened when you were the oldest of the brethren, of the children of somebody. You got the heirship. You became heir of all that person had. Now, they were really mad and didn't like that because he wasn't literally the oldest, but he was the oldest of the wife that he loved. And that's important just to understand because there's a lot of drama going on with this whole thing. But that's where this kind of comes out of, and that hatred comes from that. It says, "And Joseph," in verse 5 of chapter 37, "dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, the dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheave arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood around about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said to him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words." So he told them, hey, I had this great dream. All you guys are going to be under me. And they hated him for it. In verse 11, it says, and his brethren envied him. They envied him. They wanted what he had. They envied him. And they hated him. Now, we'll pick up in verse 18. At this point, his father tells him, hey, go check out what your brothers are doing. And so he goes to find them. And he ends up going to Dothan. And in 18 it says, and when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him, how they may bless him. No, how they may slay him, how they may kill him. And they said one to another, behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit. And we will say, some evil beast has devoured him. And we shall see what will become of his dreams. We'll see how true his dreams are when he's dead. And Reuben, verse 21, heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, shed no blood, and cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands to deliver him to his father again. So he tells, no, don't kill him. Just put him in this pit over here. He gave him the hookup, Instead of killing him, we'll just throw him in this pit. Not really. That's really messed up. No matter what. Okay. And Reuben said, verse 23, and it came to pass when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty, and there was no water in it. So they took this coat, and they threw him in this pit. Now, there's some guys that come and take him out of the pit and sell him, as we'll see in verse 28. Then there passed by Midianites, merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and they sent him back to his dad. No. And sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt. And then, I'll skip down, but they pretty much dip his coat in blood and bring it to his dad and say, we found this coat, and his dad goes, my son's dead. Whatever animal got a hold of him, he's done for. And he mourns, and then it says in 36, and the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and captain of the guard. So now, you talk about a bad day. His brethren hate him because he says, I'm going to be ruler over you, and because his dad loved him the most. And not only that, they want to kill him, but they end up throwing him in a pit because killing him was not, he was protected by, Reuben told him, no, let's stay our hand on this and not kill him, but instead put him in this pit, and then he gets sold into slavery. Now here's something interesting. He was taken out of his homeland and brought to a foreign land under slavery. And they don't speak the same language. So he had to learn a different language. He had to learn a different culture. He had to learn all this different stuff, and he's a slave. It's not like, I have this job. I really, this job is not the best job. I'll just quit this and go to another job. He was stuck there. He was sold into slavery. Verse 36 also kind of gives a little, I said that. Chapter 39 is where we'll pick up. Chapter 39, verse 1. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, the officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord wasn't with Joseph. No. Well, how can the Lord be with Joseph if he's a slave? Because the Lord can still be with you no matter where you are, no matter what your circumstances are. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a poor man. No, he was a prosperous man. How can you prosper in slavery? Because God is with him. And he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put into his hand. And it came to pass from the time that he had made him overseer in his house, and overseer and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. So because of Joseph's stand for God and walk with God, his boss, or his master, and all that his master had, because it was under Joseph, was blessed. And the master saw quickly, like, man, he's got God on his side. I want him to be on my side. So he puts him as the head, the top thing, the top job. He's the steward of all the stuff of this guy, Potiphar. Where did I leave off? 6? Yep. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. So Joseph, even in this nasty situation where he's away from his home, he's sold into slavery, his family thinks he's dead, or they don't know what's going on, his dad thinks he's dead, he's still able to rise in this situation. So we'll see verse 7. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, Lie with me. And he refused, and said unto his master's wife, Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? So this lady is trying to get with him, trying to, have an affair with him. And he says, No way, Jose. And it came to pass, verse 10, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. So every day she's just pestering him. Come on, have an affair with me. Come on. And he just says, no. And then he said, leave me alone, and she did, right? No. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. And she caught him by his garment and said, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. So they're in the house alone together, and she runs in, she grabs his clothes and says, lay with me. Like she's trying to force herself on him, and he runs out. Can you imagine? Just crazy. And she called unto, verse 13. And it came to pass, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and was fled forth, that she called unto the men of her house. Now, we'll skip down because she recites something to these guys, and that she recites also to her husband. In verse 16, it says, And she laid up his garment with her. So she has a piece of his clothing with her, until his Lord came home. And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came in unto me to mock me, came to rape me. So she's saying, this guy came in to rape me. Of course, wasn't that way. She's lying. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant unto me, that he was pretty happy.
Nope.
No, it says his wrath was kindled. He was TO'd. He was very mad because some guy came to try to rape his wife. He gave him all this stuff. Some guy, of course, he believed the wife. And Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in the prison. So it just went from bad to worse. You're a slave. Then you've just been accused of trying to rape the guy, your master's wife, and then now you just got thrown into prison. Verse 21, but the Lord wasn't with him. The Lord was with him, was with Joseph. God is still with him throughout this whole entire thing. No matter what the circumstance he faces, some nasty stuff. I've never had any of these kind of things happen to me. I've never had anything even remotely close to this kind of adversity. But the Lord is still with him and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. And whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. And the keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him, and that which he did, the Lord made to prosper. In prison, the warden goes, you're going to be in charge of all these people. You're going to be in charge of all the stuff that goes on in this prison. Now, this kind of things don't happen overnight. But I will say this, there's a lot of great principle in here about faithful in the least will be faithful in much. And you'll see his faithfulness to God, his faithfulness to have a honest reputation and a hard-working reputation, and to be able to take care of all these things really pays off, as we'll see, as he continues to look to God, and God continues to prosper him. In prison, he's been enslaved in another country, now he's been put in prison in another country. And it came to pass in chapter 40, verse 1, after these things, that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord the king of Egypt. Had offended their lord the king of Egypt, and Pharaoh was wroth against two of his officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard, into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them, and they continued a season in ward. So he is so trusted that even though he's in prison, even though he's jailed right now, he's in charge of these guys. Hey, take care of these guys, these other guys that got thrown into prison. What a man he was. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream in one night. So they both have these dreams. And they have these dreams, and they know they mean something. And in they have these dreams. One of them, they have these specific details in them, and each of these details means something. And they ask Joseph. Joseph asks them, what's going on? Asks them, why are you so sad? Because they just had these dreams. And then they say unto him, and they said unto him in verse 8, we have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them. Tell me the dreams, I pray you. And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and said to him, he had this dream, and all these little details that are in there. And Joseph, in verse 12, said unto him, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift your head, and you'll get your job back. He's going to give him his job back, and all the stuff will be hunky-dory for him. So it says that he interprets it to the butler. In verse 14, but think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. Get me out of here. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that I should be put into the dungeon. I'm put into this dungeon. Like, help me out of here. And when the chief baker, the other guy, heard the interpretation was good, he asked for what it is, and Joseph says, you're going to die in 3 days. So it's not that good of an interpretation. But, verse chapter 41, and it came to pass on the third day, verse 20, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up his head of the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants, and he restored the chief butler unto his butlership again. And he gave the cup unto Pharaoh's hand, exactly what Joseph said was going to happen. 3 days later, everything happened the way Joseph said. And he hanged the chief baker, and as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgat him. You know, he was, oh man, I got my job back. And he totally forgot about Joseph. And it came to pass at the end of 2 full days. 2 full years. That Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by a river. So he has this dream. There's these 7 huge fat cows. And then after him, there's 7 skinny, sickly cows. And the 7 skinny, sickly cows devour the 7 fat cows. And he wakes up out of his dream. Like, you know, if you have a dream like that, it says, and Pharaoh awoke. Like, whoa. And then he went back to sleep and had another dream where he had a stalk of corn come up with 7 big, fat, juicy ears on it. And then another stalk of corn came up that was blasted with the east wind, it says, and it was just like not a good stalk of corn. And the sickly stalk of corn devoured the big, fat, juicy stalk of corn. And he wakes up from that dream as well. And then he looks around to all his magicians, all these other guys, these people that he trusts in, and his wise men and stuff, to tell him what this dream means. And verse 9, then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. I have messed up. And he says, there was this guy. Remember when you threw me into prison a couple years ago with me and the butler and the baker? Well, there was this guy that interpreted our dreams. We both had dreams, and both those dreams came true. So he's like, oh, now I remember Joseph. 2 years later. So Joseph has been in prison for a long time, not including, this is 2 years. Getting all the rulership of the prison doesn't happen overnight. So it doesn't say how long, but he's been in there for a while. He's been in slavery, and he's been in prison for a while. Chapter 41. Yep. Okay, so he tells him that there is this guy. In verse 14, it says, then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved and changed his raiment and came unto the Pharaoh. He put on his best for the king. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee that thou canst interpret a dream, that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. So he says, hey, I've heard you can understand dreams. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And then he tells him the dreams, and he says, both the dreams are one dream. The 7 big fat stuff is 7 years of plenty. Verse 29. It says, behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine. And all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And the plenty shall be known in the land by reason of the famine, shall not be known in the land by the reason of the famine following, for it shall be very grievous. So you got the next 14 years, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have a lot of plenty, and then you're going to have so bad of a famine that you're not even going to remember the good stuff that you had before. Then he tells him, now therefore let Pharaoh, this is still Joseph telling him, look out a man discreet and wise and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land and take up the fifth part, 20% of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let him keep food in the cities. And that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, and that the land perish not through the famine. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servant, can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for as much as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried before him, bow the knee. And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name, some long Egyptian name, and he gave him to wife his daughter. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt and did everything that he was supposed to do. The land prospered and he took care of it. And then later on, his entire family, all his brothers that threw him in the pit, all his family was protected when they had a famine, because the whole world had a famine. They came to them because they heard they had food, and he was able to hook them up. He was able to be where he needed to be to bless God's people and to protect ultimately the Christ line and take care of God's people. Now, this is a great example, and you can read more and you can look through the record of how God just continues to bless that and all those things. But you really see and you understand that this is a servant of God. This is a servant of God. Joseph was a servant. We are sons of God. Now, we're going to go through some hard times. If you stand any amount of time, you're going to go through some turbulence. You're going to have to persevere some adversity. There's going to be times where you have to stand against what's the cool thing, or you have to fight for what is right, no matter what, And as you do that, God will exalt you. Do you see how God not only he prospered him when he was a slave, he prospered him when he was in prison, and he made him the king essentially. He became king over all the land in power anyway. He had the authority of a king. And that is the principle. When you look to God, when you keep looking to God, when you persevere, when you keep looking to God, keep fighting for the things of God, we're able to look to those things and see these great examples of men who didn't waver, who didn't fall for the temptations to give up, who didn't fall for the temptations to forsake the things of God, but instead they stuck to their guns, they stuck with the things of God, and God exalted them. It took a little while for this, but he became, not only in power had the power and authority of a king, but protected his entire family when that famine came.